All right, we are live.
Okay, so next time.
Actually, I don't need this. All right, I'll turn Nancy around so everybody can see her. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Hi, Cass. Welcome to our autumn open mic night for writers for 2023. We've been doing this event for, I don't know, 10 years, something like that now, twice a year. Celebration of local writing talent and an opportunity to hear some great stories from people. You know, it's all about stories, especially this holiday time of the year coming up. Good time to share stories. So we're glad to have 14 writers with us tonight. One of whom is actually still on his way, but should join us shortly. We'll be going in random order according to the tickets that I pull from the box.
Hey Mark, I'm sorry, is my name on one?
Yes, I just wrote one.
Thank you.
Yep, wrote one for
Thank
you.
sir.
This started as a way to promote the writers group that the library hosts, and now we are proud to announce that we have 2 writers groups here at the library. Actually, the first one is virtual. It's our Phoenix Fiction Writers Group that's held on the first and third Tuesday of the month on Zoom from 6:30 to 9. Vince Spezio, who's joined us for open mics in the past, was not able to be with us tonight. And our most recent writers support group called Words in Progress meets the third Saturday of the month, led by Patricia Conroy, and this is open to people who write in any genre, particularly those who hope to be published someday, but that's not a prerequisite. So their next meeting is actually coming up this Saturday at 1 o'clock, and they do ask for registration on the library's events calendar for that. So there are flyers for both of these groups on the table there next to the goodies. Hope you all partook of some of those goodies. All right, well, we are going in random order tonight, except for our first reader, who is actually teaching a class at this moment, but wanted to still participate tonight. She is Nancy Schwartz. Nancy is an adjunct professor at Rosemont College with 32 years of teaching experience. She holds certificates as an ELL program specialist, reading specialist, and elementary and early education educator. Her undergraduate degree came from Temple University, and she attended graduate school at St. Joseph's University. Mrs. Schwartz spent several summers studying at the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project at Columbia University. She enjoys ballet, reading, writing, art, animals, acting, music, and most of all, motherhood. She's the published author of 2 books, which you can learn more about on her website, www.upnotdownbook.com. And her new book will be out very soon. It's a picture book for children and was co-authored with her husband, Michael. It's about kindness and dogs. So every writer is going to have 5 minutes tonight to read from their work. I had an alarm set up on my phone to indicate 5 minutes. I'm not sure whether it's working, but I'll signal it at some point when we get to 5 minutes. Hold on a second, Nancy. I got to turn the screen around so everybody in the room can see you. Okay. Uh-oh. Get over the carpet. There we go. Okay. All right, Nancy, take it away.
Okay, thanks for having me. My student can say goodbye. Okay, this is my newest book. It's called Up Bow, Down Bow, and I'm just going to do a quick reading from it, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer. This is the book, Up Bow, Down Bow, and it was co-authored with my son who's on the cover, and my co-author is his fellow teacher, April E. Beard. And my first book, this is my first book, Up Not Down Syndrome, all the lessons I've learned from Alex. But quickly from Up Bow, Down Bow. Initially, when my school district, where my son Alex, who has Down syndrome and epilepsy, attends, they asked if he could play an instrument. And I checked off on the form that he could play the cello, thinking they would probably not do it. And it was April's first student out of college, and she was told not to bother teaching him. If he doesn't walk or talk, just tell the family, really, it's not going to work. And she decided to do it. And she's been doing it for 4 years. And here's just a quick part from the book. April's email about Alex being a true musician sparked something inside me. I read and reread the words with the recording. He seems to let his creative instincts take over as he is part of the music. And I want to make sure you understand that Alex does not walk or talk yet, but yet he's able to do this with help. I think to let his creative instincts take over as he is part of the music. I think this is true for every musician. When we work on the small technique April studies, it's all about the focus, development of small. When we sit in an orchestra, we need the small skills, but I find much more a part of something big. All that just to say, Alex is certainly a true musician. The email arrived a few weeks before my first book was published in March of 2020, just before the world shut down. Alex's lessons with April were a pivotal part of Up Not Down syndrome, and April had contributed to the project not only by being a major cheerleader and all she did to work with Alex, but she also wrote in an endorsement. The truth and beauty of Nancy Schwartz's words tell an ongoing story of love, learning, and the power of acceptance. All can learn from this family's boundless hope and from their source of joy and strength, Alex, April Beard, music educator and violist. April's words on the back of the book, much like her emails about Alex, made my heart soar. In a moment of inspiration, wrote back, your last passage made me think I should write a book with you and what we learned. If you still have my emails and yours from this year, your email with my responses, can you resend them to me? I'm going to think about organizing a book with our emails and the work you have done with Alex. It is truly extraordinary. I think the title of the cello book could be called something like Playing Cello for Beginners or Up Bow, Down Bow. At that time, because my primary career was mother and teacher, and I hadn't yet embarked on this writing path, Michael and I liked keeping a centralized source of information for Alex, so we shared a single email address. I tend to hold on to things, but my husband, being the opposite, cleaned out our email inbox and outbox. I had no more access to the emails and wouldn't have been able to recapture what at that point was a year's worth of memories. April quickly replied, compelling our correspondence over the year will be my little project next Monday, since I'm done with lessons after this week. Except for Alex, we will have one more lesson before the summer. I'm excited to look back and see all the progress this year. Should I send his cello home for the summer with him next Monday? I'm thinking he can stick with that size for next school year, but we can always check in on that when school starts back up. She not only sent our emails back to me, she painstakingly cataloged and organized them, and within a few hours of poring over our communications, I realized that there was no way I could write a book about Alex's experiences with the cello without his teacher, April Beard, my co-author. And this is Alex's voice. Alex, music is a language with words. I can and hear and groove, and I don't have trouble standing, talking, walking, or being by myself. Music gives confidence and love with tons of sparkle. Sparkle is what life is all about. Moments of joy, little moments, like when Mom leans our butterfly bush next to my nose so I can smell the perfume. Watch the bees buzz around the purple flowers. The way my brothers, Josh and Sam, on their off time, so tall and handsome, lift me into the pool to swim with me at the gym where they are lifeguards. The way Dad makes delicious food and helps me with everything. These moments are everything. Music is love. The way our dining room chandelier shines with rainbows, carrying hope everywhere. Music makes my body tingle with happiness and love. So if you have questions, I'm happy to answer. One more thing. Any questions?
Thank you, Nancy.
Thanks.
All right. Appreciate it. I'm going to do the rest of this from up there. Any writers come up on this side and to the podium. All right. Let's draw our first name. All right, and that will be Christine Emmert. Christine Emmert has just published her book, Dreaming of Storms. She takes pleasure in writing across the genres. You can find her work read and performed in the USA, UK, and Canada. Often she collaborates with her husband Richard, right there, on theater projects. And last summer they appeared at the Avenue Theater in Helena, Montana in Love Letters. Over 60 years in theater, and she has never lost her love for it. Christine, welcome back.
Tell me when my time starts.
Oh,
Okay.
when you...
Well, obviously, I'm not going to try to use the lectern.
Right.
Thank you all for being here instead of looking at the game, although we hope they're doing well for the sake of the people that are. All right, I have 2 poems I am reading to you. One is called Bobby Sands Came to Supper. I don't know if you all know who Bobby Sands is, and I don't want to insult people who do know by telling you, but he was an Irish hunger striker in the time that Margaret Thatcher and the British government were having problems, their troubles in Ireland. Bobby Sands was in Armagh prison. He protested the treatment of the prisoners by going on a hunger strike. 66 days later, he was dead of starvation. Okay.
All right.
Bobby Sands came to dinner. I hardly knew what to prepare for this supper, which was certainly the last one. Well, I knew he loved the bread of sorrow. I heard years ago he chewed it down as he heard the Brits coming. Well, should I smear it with honey as my mother used to do for me, making digestion easier? Well, then I could pour the whiskey for him into a grail. He was not partial to wine, but the blood of his host so many years ago at the last fasting. Instead, the whiskey gave voice to his anthems in this night when he was again live and well, albeit elsewhere than with his fellows. We talked of the beauty of the land, the tears of the people, the need for more than prayers as dessert for this meal of affliction. He told me heaven was a lonely place. He told me he did not miss the voice of guns, but he missed the hum of life around him. I asked him to come to dinner again, but he laughed. His laughter danced around the room. Oh, my last memory of his last supper was the laughter. Dinner parties are rare these days. Martyrs lose their appetite for life and its pleasures. He kissed my cheek and thanked me, but he was quick to depart. Okay, one a little more hopeful. This one. Rosy Solstice. Rose by its perfume, rose by its sight, rose by its thorns. There are so many ways to know a rose. Poets make it metaphor and simile in their verse. The seasons find it every year in our wild and untamed stretches of field. But there is that secret rose without any outward attributes filling our senses. The high winds change to a soft breeze. It is that rose that promises to bloom, to die, to bloom again, forever. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Our next reader is Greg Fox.
Oh, no.
He began his writing career as a reporter, then editor of a local newspaper in Delaware County. He taught writing for the Phoenixville School District for 20 years before retiring in 2020. He's now living the dream with his beautiful wife, 3 cats, a new mountain bike, and a 6-month-old grandson.
All right.
Greg is a testament to the fact that one can earn a decent living as a writer. As usual, he has nothing important to tell you, and he has no idea why he even shows up here twice a year, except he is in awe of your talent and loves listening to your story. We do too. Thanks. Welcome, Greg.
All right. I hesitate to write in the first person singular, lest my readers, or in this case my listeners, make the assumption that I, the author, and the narrator of the story are one and the same. As is the case of Edgar Allan Poe, who, as we all know, sprouted more eyes than an old potato in his many tales of the macabre. So convinced were his readers of his autobiographical intentions and Poe's prose, like that postcard, that when his former Philadelphia residence was purchased for rehabilitation in 1933 by Richard Gimbel, son of the department store's founder, workers were instructed to search for skeletal remains bound in chains behind the basement walls. But I am no Edgar Allan Poe, and having honed my craft in the halls of journalism, allowing my protagonist to speak for himself compels me to write with a higher level of integrity, depriving myself of blatant use of exaggeration and hyperbole, useful tools for providing a sense of depth and excitement to an otherwise mundane yarn. Rather, I find it much more gratifying to share my most profound experiences through the mouths of characters that I have created in my own image, allowing me to intermingle timelines and stretch the truth at will. After all, what is it that my reader requires of me, the truth or a good story? Whether you believe the tale I am about to divulge or come to regard it as total bullshit may rest upon what I have already told you about myself. And having done so, how can I possibly convince you that the narration which follows provides undeniable proof to the existence of the supernatural? For nearly 10 years now have passed, no 20 on the anniversary of my birth, that I dutifully navigated the maze of willow-lined roads that led to the salmon-colored marble crypt behind which I could plainly view my mother's headstone. Gingerly approaching her resting place, I took pains not to trample upon the outlines of other graves along the way, a habit born more of respect for the interned than of superstition. As usual, I kneeled in front of the polished stone that bore her name, brushed my fingers across the skillfully carved letters, and crossed myself in the fashion from which I was nurtured. And it is here that I must attempt to secure favor with those of you born of Italian mothers, for whom death is no excuse for the settlement of an argument. Well, I took the position that I was not to blame for her brother's incarceration. The discussion very quickly hinged on her portfolio and her fear of my father squandering my inheritance on the red-haired floozy at his place of part-time employment. Of these matters we bantered for some minutes until our conversation was interrupted by the call of a lone crow, or perhaps it was a raven, perched on a barren branch not far on my starboard side. As I focused my gaze upon the creature, it twisted its oily black head to stare at me. In that same instant, an angry blast knocked the cap from my head, depositing it squarely in the center of the adjoining gravesite, so that in retrieving it, I left an imprint of my boot in the soft grass. From that moment, my thoughts were no longer of my own making, but those of another man, perhaps much older than I am now. He was immersed in conversation with a large number of people, speaking in a tongue I could scarcely recognize. Unhindered by the cacophony inside my skull, and still in control of my voluntary motor skills, I set upon completing my daily task, all the while carrying the memories of this man I had never come to know. It was in this disposition that I posted my parcel, refueled my vehicle, and proceeded to complete my B-day workout at the gym. Upon returning to my residence, I tossed my bag into a corner and flopped onto a chair directly across from where my wife sat, sitting her afternoon tea. "What was that?" she asked. but I must not have replied because I heard her ask it again, only much louder. At first I strained to respond, then finally was able to spew a litany as unintelligible as those of an aboriginal to the first of the Spanish conquistadors. "Stop it," she demanded. "Stop it now or I'm taking you to the hospital. I think you're having a stroke." Shaking my head violently from side to side, I instantly regained possession of the mind and soul of the person you are now seeing before you.
Kevin Orr. Okay, so Kevin, you can go up there and introduce yourself. And then when you're ready to read, I'll start the timer.
Thanks. Hey everybody, my name is Kevin. My girlfriend and I are new to Phoenixville. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to read tonight, even though I didn't know I was supposed to sign up, so I'll take care of that for next time. So this is chapter 1 of an autobiography that I started a few months ago. A clean slate. That's what this page was up until about 30 seconds ago. It's what I've been desperately seeking for 30 years. Much like the pages of this book will be in a very short amount of time, the past 30 years have become a cluttered mesh of characters that I'll desperately attempt to weave in order. My main reason for writing this, apart from the fact that I believe others can benefit, is to start at the beginning and attempt to unravel a fabrication woven during a lifetime web of lies and exaggeration. Yesterday, I was rummaging through my parents' humid attic looking for any personal belongings that may have found their way up there over the years, and it came across a diploma. It was from 1984 and declared my educational triumph over preschool. My name, Kevin Hennessy, was boldly typed across the top with cartoon pictures of congratulatory squirrels and sparrows smiling under a proud rainbow. I stared at my name for a full minute, forgetting that that's how it was spelled. On March 31st, 1980, a flush 10-pound blob of vernic skin exited the inner world and entered the outer world. Either due to tradition or lack of creativity and imagination, I was given my biological father's middle name as my first name, and his first name as my middle. I only have one memory of Michael Kevin Hennessy from my childhood. I was in an unknown house visiting unknown people, and I found my 3-year-old self standing face to face with a shaggy dog. At least I remember the dog as being shaggy. For some reason, I smacked the dog in the face and was yelled at. I ran up the stairs and threw myself on a bed crying. Mike was gentle in telling me that it was okay, but not okay at the same time. The next memory I have of him is at a Ruby Tuesdays in 2000. I spun around on a bar stool and met in person. He struggled with addiction and remained absent for 17 years, but we'll get to that later. My mother, Catherine Keenan, was married and divorced twice with 2 boys from 2 different fathers by the age of 20. My brother from her first marriage was 5 years older than me, and in a multi-generational attempt at unimaginative non-creativity, he was named William Kozluk after his father, William Kozluk, and neither had middle names. I've always felt that parents don't give nearly as much time as they should to naming their children. Sure, occasionally you'll hear of something very clever and unique like Braden, or Anya, or Blanket, but rarely is a child's opportunistic future taken into account. I've considered naming my next child Bitten. Not only does it exert authority, but it literally opens doors that previously would remain closed off. Every time my child comes across an area marked or signed forbidden, it would be exactly for them. What would a police officer or security guard say? Nothing. A simple flash of the driver's license would firmly state their allowance in an otherwise barred area. I'm toying around with the names Bitten or possibly authorized personnel. Both are unisex because I say they are. With 2 absentee fathers, I remember living in a second-floor, 2-bedroom apartment with my mother and older brother in Sharon Hill, Pennsylvania. My mother worked at a pretentious Dunkin' Donuts establishment called Mr. Donuts, which is where she would meet her third and final husband, William Orr. They were both on the clock. William Orr, or Bill to family and friends, was a Sharon Hill police officer and a characteristical 180-degree opposite of her first 2 marital mishaps. Although meeting at Mr. Donuts, there would be 2 occasions that Bill would be called upon for help before him and my mother began dating. On one occasion, the basement of our duplex had flooded out, and after my mother dialed 911, Bill responded. According to my mother's testimony, he walked through a foot of water while still in uniform with his boots on to shut off the broken hot water heater. On another occasion, my mother locked the keys in her car, and again he responded using a Slim Jim to open it. These encounters took place while we lived in Sharon Hill and while Mike was partially in the picture. At some point in 1982, Mike and my mother bought a home in Delmar Village in Fallcroft. Delmar Village is a brick maze of affordable row homes with a wide range of livelihood. The neighbor on your left could be a full-time paramedic with a seat on Borough Council, while the neighbor on your right is selling embalming fluid with 4 pit bulls tied up in the basement. Somehow they managed to commingle there with minimal report crimes and even fewer trees. It wouldn't be until after Mike abandoned the three of us, leaving the house we lived in going for sheriff's sale, that we temporarily moved in with my mom and papa. They lived in a 3-story beige home with a decent-sized yard on Felton Ave in a town connected to Sharon Hill called Collingdale. Railroad tracks that are strictly used for freight train cargo create the border of the two towns. By the age of 6, Bill legally adopted me, and the only understanding I had of this was thinking how special and different I was, that my last name was changed from Hennessy to Orr. For all future intents and purposes, I will always refer to my biological father as Mike and Bill Orr as my father or dad. It wouldn't be until much later in life that I would understand the full impact that decision had played. My brother's father was partially in the picture, and he was never adopted. In 1984, the four of us moved into a 3-bedroom home on a brick cookie-cutter street in Glen Olden, Pennsylvania. Glen Olden is a middle-class town, 2 towns separated from Sharon Hill, with low crime and low expectations required from its residents. And I mean that in a positive way. Growing up, the expectancy of greatness was not impressed upon children. Middle-class mediocrity was almost mandatory. My brother was 5 years older than me and had quite a reserve about him, and had a quiet reserve about him, that I was too hyperactive and unaware to envy. Mathematically inclined, he seemed to easily excel in school. Incapable of emulating his personality, I would cause arguments whenever I would wear his clothes to middle school that were 3 sizes too large. I always thought I could get away with it. He would leave for high school an hour before I got up. In the late 80s and early 90s, Zuma MC Hammer pants and silk shirts were as popular as starter baseball caps. I had none, so I would take his and gingerly fold and place them back in the appropriate drawer before he got home from some nerdy math club or track and field practice. To this day, I'll never figure out how he would know, but his detective skills were as on point as his calculus skills. Often an ass-beating would ensue later that evening. We shared a bedroom most of our childhood, starting off with bunk beds and eventually outgrowing and separating the beds. My mother gave birth to twins, Jennifer and Michelle, in 1985, shortly after we all moved to Glen Olden. They too shared a bedroom and were nicknamed the Doo-Doo Twins, after a massive smearing of hazardous diaper waste on each other and the interior of their crib following an afternoon nap. I remember being jealous of the attention always given to my sisters. On one occasion, my mother stood up from a rocking chair with a sister in each arm, and as she went to walk forward, I thrusted my foot in front of hers. Fortunately, her balance was much stronger than my tripping attempt, and she quickly regained her footing. Otherwise, she would have taken a header with both babies onto their bedroom floor. I was 5, and I'm sure somebody with a degree higher than preschool would have a field day psychoanalyzing that incident. But I don't know why I did that. Not understanding why I would choose most of the terrible things that I do would become a common theme in my life. So.
All right. My alarm did go off, but it was inaudible, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Right near the 7-Eleven?
Yeah.
All right. Cass Sobey is up next. Where are you? Here you are. CK Sobey continues a life of rich curiosity. She retired from her professional businesses to spend more time reimagining. CK lives in the Valley Forge area of Pennsylvania, creating in her kitchen or following an idea that has caught her attention. The ideas are always present. Most of her time is spent in her studio, filtering through the ideas that have caught her attention, and stays occupied nourishing and birthing the idea from that point on with assistance from her muses. Her newest book, Outpourings, Volume 2, Musings, Wool Gathering, and Ghosts, will be ready to order on October 25th of this year. CK's writing has been featured in the Reflectionary, Publishers Weekly, Reader's Views, Inside Scoop, and the Midwest Review. 101 Words will publish a short story in December called The Husband. You can read more about her at www.innerharvesting.com or www.cksobey.com. Reach out to her at cassobey@gmail.com. Cass, take it away.
I could cut that in half. Little gifts. Remembering that during the first 2 years of COVID, I walked more than I ever had. On one of my routes, I would pass a large metal street lamp. Its base was about 3 feet high. Around the base was an oval ledge, and on this ledge, people began leaving little pieces of themselves to share with others. This was during the very early stages of the pandemic, when extreme caution and craziness was taking place. When we undressed after walking through our front door, when we left thank you on the front door for UPS, Amazon, and the postman, diligently wiping down all the packages, vigilant with everything, at least most of us. There were only a few who walked this route, that found the ledge of gifts. Every day I wondered what was added and what would be taken. Small stones, little crosses, stars of David, and sometimes a slip of paper with a word on it under a small stone. I began leaving teeny pieces of jewelry and stones to be shared with anyone on the gift ledge. When someone took anything I left, it felt like a gift to me as well. There were a lot of gentle magic during the early days of COVID. I practiced paying attention to this part of my small universe. Every day, little gifts are waiting to be realized. What did you do in the closet? How would I have known that you were so shy and it wasn't shyness that kept you away? How would I have known that you did your best work, thought your deepest thoughts, and lived your best life when you were alone in the closet? I never gave much thought to what it meant to be in the closet and the courage to come out of the closet, wherever that door opens to. What a feeling it must be to spend time tucked away, hidden away, perhaps feeling shame is enough to hide oneself. That would be a good reason, and I would join you for that cause alone. Or maybe it was just not wanting to enter the insanity of the outside world, contemplating about the many reasons to be in the closet and how subtle and brilliant the closet can be. I can only grasp the enormous effort it takes to turn the knob and take the first step out. I salute you, I congratulate you, and I see you. I feel it's a good idea for me to go into the closet, into the darkness with whatever answers and mysteries my closet has waiting. Spend some time to engage in my wild, imaginative notions, wherever they take me. To reunite with my sensory self, the smell as I reach for the things that surround me, to feel the tickle of clothes across my face. Touching fabrics is different in the dark, more sensual, more almost erotic. My eyes finally developing the ability to see in the closet, but more from touch, a different type of sight. Getting familiar with my skin again, and opening to truths that lie within me, waiting to be delivered. Discovering odors of my body's unmasked aroma, original organic perfume. Let me end by saying thank you for sharing with me what you did in the closet. I will keep your confidence. Please keep mine.
Okay, that's good. Very good. Right, it is C.J. Hedrick's turn next. C.J. Hedrick is 35 years old and processes invoices at a disaster relief company in Exton. His first ebooks, The Murata Legacy Ragnarok and The Murata Legacy Doomsday, are live on Amazon.com, and he's having his third book edited. C.J.
How do you do? This is an abridged and slightly cleaned up excerpt from my first story, The Murata Legacy Ragnarok, currently under revision. Well, of course I've seen the circus depicted on television, Jazz said as she, Christian, and Makoto walked to the Murata Tower's elevator. It's always the same story. If it's for kids, the circus is a family, sometimes with one bad seed screwing the others over, usually the ringmaster. If it's for teens or older, it's either a den of backstabbing jerks or a front for criminal activities. Actually, Makoto said, it's funny you mention that story, Jazz. When I heard you were from a circus, I was a little disappointed you didn't have such an interesting backstory. She cocked her eyebrow. What am I supposed to say about that? Sorry I don't abduct small children. Don't be offended. I just have an overactive imagination. When I heard about Jazz Clemens, the ninja alchemist from the circus, I had dreams of locking horns with an entire circus of assassins, fire breathers, lion tamers, acrobatic martial artists, knife-throwing clowns, well, I guess I got that one, and a ringmaster with a laser whip, and it all culminate in with the big top itself becoming a giant robot and rampaging through the streets like Godzilla. Seriously? Christian asked as they stepped out onto their floor. That's why you were sneaking out to find her? Don't give me that look. I knew it was a dream, but I hoped there'd be at least a lot of adept performers to fight. Well, good, Jazz said. We clowns get a bad enough rap as it is. And by the way, we'd never afford the zoning permit for a giant robot. Though you're not entirely wrong. Everyone in the Circus of Audacity either fought in the previous tournament or is related to a veteran. Mama once called it the Circus of Fools. They came together as a support group, only to get the idea to become a circus, to let home blossom from despair. How's that for a backstory? Kind of depressing, to be honest. Ah, but it worked. Together, my brothers and sisters, my aunts and uncles, and my mama and papa were all happy. But so many were devastated by what they had experienced, I had to do something to truly make it worth it. Fighting for your family. That's part of it. But of course, I have my own personal stake in. Their apartment door in front of them shook from an unknown impact. The hell? Makoto closed his eyes. I sense Obachan's kicking some ass. Is that Shiraishi? Christian peered through the wall of his hyperanalysis. Why, yes. Yes, it is. Makoto ran over and threw open the door, where he saw Eiko lifting a young man straight off the ground by his neck. He wore a dark purple gi with a black scarf over his nose and mouth. Eiko looked over at them. Welcome home, boys, and welcome to my home, Jazz. She then tossed the man onto the patio, where he slid to a stop at his son's feet. Please don't mind Ichigo and Kaido. They were just leaving. Damn it, Ichigo grumbled as he struggled to his feet. Damn it! You're not supposed to be this strong. Whatever do you mean? I was this strong yesterday and the day before. But after all those battles... Oh, Dad, I already recovered. By the way, how did you know all my assessment tests yesterday? Did the Tanuma clan say the secret? Don't underestimate us. And yes, Kaido said innocently, it was the Tanuma clan who told us. Damn it, boy, we're going to talk about this later. What a nice, honest boy you have, Eiko said, just like Makoto. It's a shame we can't be friends because of the silly grudge. Silly? You dare mark our key-shaping ability by calling it inferior. But Kaido's already passed his qualifier. He'll win this tournament and bring us glory. Mistress, will this take long? Christian asked. We're here to study, and I don't want to waste time by cleaning up this mess. Don't worry about the mess, dear. I'll deal with it. Don't ignore me! He charged forward, wrapping Ki around his arms in the form of sharp gauntlets. Eiko weaved around two-eyed swings before thrusting her palm into his chest. He let out a scream as Ki seemed to erupt like beams of light from his joints. He then collapsed onto his knees. You witch. She circled her fallen foe. That's the little thing I call the all-channel seal strike. You won't be able to move for a day. And since you can't move anyway, you may as well spend that time asleep. As she rendered Ichigo unconscious with a sleeper hold, Jazz nudged with her elbow. Dude, your grandma's the coolest old lady ever. Damn straight. And very
Okay. What did I do with my timer? The timer just disappeared. All right, well, we'll find it later. Who do we have next? We have Bill Lambert. Bill Lambert was born in Bethlehem, PA, and grew up in that area. His career choice was drafting and design technology, comically known as DDT. In 1974, he lived and worked in Allentown when, totally by chance, on a July Sunday afternoon in a tiny town in Virginia, he met Eileen Fleming, a middle school teacher who resided in Broomall. 10 seconds either way, and it never would have happened. They married in 1975 and moved to Pottstown, then permanently to Phoenixville in 1978. His last position was with a large consulting engineering firm in Pottstown, from which he was laid off in 1990. Eileen retired in 1993, and from then until she passed in 2019, they traveled extensively. Bill's writing is about the wonderful life and times he and his lovely Eileen enjoyed in their 44 years of marriage. Bill.
Thank you. As was just stated in my bio, we traveled extensively throughout the U.S. and somewhat in Canada, and our favorite mode of travel for long distances was always trains, and we accumulated over 80,000 miles on Amtrak alone.
Wow.
One of the many features we liked about Amtrak was the liberal luggage policies. Each passenger was allowed 2 average-sized suitcases weighing less than 50 pounds each, which at many stations could, at the passenger's discretion, be checked in for handling by Amtrak crews as part of the trip benefits. Additionally, each person was allowed 1 overnight bag, 1 camera bag or the like, and 2 bags of miscellaneous items as carry-ons. During one trip, we overnighted in Chicago, and as we were waiting to check our bags for the next leg of that journey, a young man ahead of us was carrying a suitcase and pushing a duffel bag along on the floor. When he was being waited on, the clerk noticed that the suitcase was just under 50 pounds and the duffel was just over. Since that occurred during a slack period, the agent worked with the young man to transfer some of the goods from the duffel to the suitcase so that both would make the weight limit. I'm certain this procedure was not part of the clerk's job description, but then he retired only a few weeks later. Actually, Amtrak encourages passenger assistance like this as long as it's not done during busy periods. It's great PR. If we were traveling to any given location more than once, if at all possible, we enjoyed taking a different route with different trains. Such was the case with our second junket to San Diego via Los Angeles for a week's visit. Instead of going from Chicago to LA on the Southwest Chief, a more direct route, we opted for the Texas Eagle Sunset Limited train, which went south to San Antonio, where the cars for Los Angeles were added to the Sunset coming west from Jacksonville and on its way to Los Angeles. This meant that our train routing was Philadelphia to DC to Chicago, then San Antonio, Los Angeles, and San Diego. After arriving at Washington Union Station, we promptly checked our bags for Los Angeles. After we retired, sorry about that. At the Los Angeles Union Station's baggage claim area, we waited for our suitcases as one by one the luggage pieces and the passengers disappeared until the carousel was empty and everyone else was gone. The baggage clerk soon appeared and I asked, "Is that all the luggage from the Sunset?" He replied, "Yes. What's your name?" "Lambert." "Come with me," and he ushered us to his office. There against one wall were several packages and suitcases, and he pointed to 2 specific pieces, asking, "Do they look familiar?" "Yep, those are ours. You folks came out on the Sunset, which is a day longer. They arrived yesterday on the Chief."
We did take a brief pause. I forgot to turn our video back on for the people on Zoom after our first speaker.
And they're patiently waiting.
And they've been patiently listening, yes. Okay, my apologies about that. Now you can see our our speakers. All right. All right, who is next? We have Teresa Werba. Okay. Teresa Werba, formerly Teresa Rodriguez, is the author of 3 books of poetry, most recently Sonnets, a collection of 65 sonnets. Her 4th book of poetry, What Was and Is Formal Poetry and Free Verse, is being published by Shanty Arts within the coming year. Her work has appeared in such journals as the Scarlet Leaf Review, the Wilderness House Literary Review, Spindrift, Mezzocammon, the Wombwell Rainbow, Fevers of the Mind, Serotonin, The Art of Autism, The Road Not Taken, and the Society of Classical Poets Journal. Her work ranges from forms such as the ode and sonnet to free verse, with topics ranging from neurodivergence, the writing process, love, loss, and aging, to faith and disillusionment. Her website is www.bardsinger.com, where you can view videos of her performance poetry and find information about her books. Follow Teresa on Instagram and Twitter at The Sonnet Queen. Folks on Zoom, please mute yourself as we welcome Teresa.
Thank you, Mark, very much. My first poem is called Sonnet of the Hardened Heart. By the way, this is all, I just decided to do all sonnets, so that's my book, Sonnets, and it's over there as well. Careless, I warn myself. Bother no more with inner crevices, prying the shell like scabs, rough, oozing, sore, which crust but tell of tumults against the psychic seabed floor. It is in vain, swollen and hard around the meat, like newborn skin or the vaginal flower. The protection, obdure it, damns me. Damn the mound which buries my soul and suffocates what little power my will may afford. That meat, that flower, that skin, a pulsing pinkish mass is thus entombed. And yet, for her to exist at all, the wound must needs be sealed by this guardian within. She lives within her shell. Perhaps she dies as well, because it makes and mutes her cries. The second I've chosen is called Annelid Sonnet, and Annelid being a leechy type creature like a leech. I thought I had forgotten you by now, but I haven't. Must I go again into this place of torment? Tell me how to get rid of this leech that suckles when I try to free it. How can I walk on when I am chained? I bury you, inside, outside, within, with all whereon. Be gone, be dead. But in the casket you abide, alive but molded, withered, rotten worm that will not die, though I had thought you dead. I lunge forth and away, but you hold firm, with prongs embedded in my bones and head. Oh, you have held a place within too long, too undeserved, too late to right the wrong. And the final selection that I've chosen is called Oh When I Hear. Oh, when I hear the plaintive, painful sound of music played within a minor key, or modal scales in doleful reverie, suspensions and its dissonance abound. A juxtaposing light and dark around a center of discordant harmony, combined with the most weeping melody, is where a truth so sacred may be found. For it is in the ebbing resolution, when tensions ease and struggling is at rest, that one can find a consonant conclusion and peace from pain residing in the breast. For suffering can be of benefit if acquiescing, music's made through it. Thank you very much.
Carolyn Cott. Carolyn has been a professional writer, editor for corporations, nonprofits, universities, and individuals for 3 decades. She's also a creative writer, formerly of short stories, and currently a novel. Carolyn.
Thanks, Mark. So this is a novella I started, finished a few years ago, and then put aside and am revising it because it needs it. This is chapter 1. It's called Ollie and Spuds. Ollie is an abandoned pit bull, and Spuds is an abandoned cat. Chapter 1, The Alley. It's been 3 days now since the cat appeared in Ollie's alley. He thinks of it as his alley because he's been there for how long now? 2 months? Maybe 4. He remembers arriving there. There was snow. The man had unchained him, pulled him into the car, and drove away. Ollie wanted to enjoy the ride, but something was very wrong. The man hunched over the steering wheel, silent, his jaw tight. The children weren't there, although the back seat smelled vaguely of peanut butter, and the woman wasn't in the front seat, turning around toward the children and talking to them. The man stopped on a deserted city street. Looking both ways before opening the back door, he pulled Ollie out by the scruff of the neck and sped off. Ollie ran after the car as it moved farther and farther away, turned a corner, and was gone. He memorized the place where the car turned. Panting, he sat down, only then noticing the cold. The sun had just risen, casting chilly light on the blank faces of the buildings. A tattered awning blew in the wind. A spear of an icicle crashed onto the sidewalk. Ollie ate snow, but it wasn't enough to quench his thirst and made him shiver. He wandered the streets looking for a familiar landmark and searching for food. Then he found the alley that smelled of food and garbage. Ollie tucked himself behind a stack of wooden pallets and lay on a pile of cardboard where he felt relatively safe. A man in a stained apron pushed open the door with his foot and heaved a delicious-smelling bag into the dumpster. When the door clanged shut, Ollie scampered up the stack of pallets and into the dumpster, tearing at the bag with his teeth, and ate. He developed a routine of wandering the streets at night, hunting for food, and returning to his alley early in the morning before cars and people arrived. He learned it was not good to be out when people were about. There was an afternoon when boys chased him, chubby-cheeked boys dressed in blue uniforms, dragging book bags and pitching stones at him. Most whistled past, but one hit him. Ollie yelped and slowed down. They were almost upon him when he ran again, cutting across a busy road, turning a corner, and losing them. Returning to his alley, exhausted and thirsty, Ollie went to the base of a downspout, found a small amount of water, and drank. He curled into a tight ball behind the pallets and slept. Ollie frequently dreams of home, of his children, of bowls of fresh water and food. When he wakes, he holds the memory before opening his eyes. One morning, Ollie smells something new. With his head still resting on his paws, he scans the alley and spots the flash of a ginger-colored cat, skinny and in pursuit of something at the far end of the alley. Ollie rises and stretches, keeping an eye on the cat. The cat pounces and misses a mouse that leaps into a small hole in the wall. She then saunters into a narrow beam of sunlight slanting down between the buildings and washes herself, the sun sparking on her ginger fur. She lies down, curls her tail neatly around her toes, and closes her eyes to slits. She knows the dog is there. She is watching.
Janice O'Brien. Over her professional career, Janice O'Brien has been an art director, package designer, brand and marketing director, all involving extensive promotional and business writing. Despite being a designer, she loved to write. A poet, writer, and designer, her first book, Poems I Wrote When I Wasn't Talking, was published in 2015. She loves to travel, connect with people, and cook and eat delectable food. After living most of her life in the New York metropolitan area, O'Brien now lives in Phoenixville, PA. Janice, welcome.
I'll be reading the beginning of the introduction of my new book that was just published, Eating My Way Through Life. Maybe it happened the first time I bit into Grandma's warm Toll House cookies that she served me with a glass of ice-cold milk. Or possibly it began at Aunt Rose's, eating juicy meatballs with spaghetti for lunch. But once I devoured my first shrimp cocktail with horseradish sauce one Christmas Eve at Grandma and Grandpa's, I knew for sure I loved eating scrumptious food. Some of my fondest memories growing up involved someone cooking and making something incredible to eat. The list included Grandma's nostalgic baked goods, Mom's creative meals, Dad's hearty breakfasts, Aunt Carolyn's out-of-this-world lasagna, Aunt Rose's Italian dishes, and Grandpa's extravagant Southern dinners. These are the stories about being surrounded by talented cooks feeding me irresistible food and how that influenced me in my direction of life. Each one gave me a sense of who I was through the food I ate. Born into my family, I could not escape the strong desire to learn to cook and bake. Planning and making mouth-watering meals and then eating them together was a priority to our family. When we ate sitting around the dining room table, we discussed planning, cooking, enjoying what our future meals would be. Food was a common denominator that joined us together. My family were foodies long before the term was introduced into our vernacular. As a little girl, Mom didn't teach me traditional nursery rhymes like Little Bo Peep or Mary Had a Little Lamb. Mom taught me the song, If I Knew You'd Be Coming, I Would Have Baked a Cake. I was doomed. When I was 12, Aunt Carolyn mailed me a postcard from Miami where she and Uncle Jim were vacationing. She didn't mention the beautiful beaches or the sunny weather or where they had gone sightseeing. She wrote me a card about dessert. Janice, you should see the strawberry shortcake I got last night. It was more than I could eat and whipped cream galore, right up your alley. Love, Aunt Carolyn. By the time I attended art school, I recognized eating flavorsome food was a passion. Many Thursdays during our second year, my friend Carol Furman and I trekked across 23rd Street from 3rd to 8th Avenue. Taking a seat at Schraff's counter, we ordered a slice of toasted pound cake a la mode covered with hot fudge sauce. The warmth and crunch of the pound cake in combination with the smooth, cold vanilla ice cream was magical, and the sweet fudge sauce topped it off was delightful. Substitute dessert for lunch? Carol's plan to skip a meal opened a new world to me. I was someone who really followed the rules, and it never occurred to me to skip lunch and have dessert, but why not? Many weeks we followed this routine. It became my favorite day of the week. Like me, my family was made up of mostly extroverts who thrived on being around people. Entertaining, eating, and spending time together was the focus. What went with entertaining? Appetizing food. Of course, we had diverse interests beyond eating, but whatever we planned, we included something divine to eat. The day might include a picnic, trip to the beach, lunch at a great restaurant, or afternoon tea. As Laura Shapiro, a food historian, stated, food happens every day. Realize it or not, everyone has a relationship with food from the day you are born till the day you die. Mom and Dad never thought twice about getting into the car and going on a pilgrimage at distant destinations to locate their favorite food. On weekends, if my parents felt like they wanted clams on the half shell, we jumped into the car and drove to Biggie's Clam Bar down at Carlstadt on Route 17. Other Saturday afternoons, we ventured to Hiram's Road Stand on Palisade Avenue in Fort Lee near the George Washington Bridge for the best hot dogs served with chili. In Anthony Bourdain's book, World Travel, a guide to the most captivating places he visited around the world, he mentions that his dad took him and his brother to Jaime's too. It was one of the two places he highlighted in New Jersey, so confirmed my parents' good taste. Mr. Bourdain from Leonia mentioned how the Thurman hot dogs with natural casing were deep fried and referred to as the Rippers. I don't remember that name, but we loved eating them sitting on Dad's bumper of his '48 black Cadillac.
Okay, 4 more writers to go here. And up next is Holly Beebe. Holly Beebe has recently started writing people's life stories, and her first book is titled The Amazing Life Stories of Alex Eigen, from which she will be reading tonight. She has also started a company called Your Life in Stories and is interested in working with anyone who would like to have their stories preserved for future generations. She writes poetry as a hobby and has published a poetry book titled Dancing with Words. She is currently working on 2 more poetry books, which she hopes to finish in the near future. Her mind is constantly rhyming, so if you give her a topic, she will write you a poem. Holly.
I think it's a curse. Okay, this is the introduction. Alex has lived a fascinating and challenging life. She was born on February 6, 1947 in Poland as an only child to a Polish mother and a Russian father. Her father was murdered for marrying a Polish woman when Alex was very young, and she has no recollection of him in her life. Her mother remarried a Jewish man who lost most of his family in a massacre during the Second World War. He became Alex's only known father, and she adored him. Due to political unrest, her family was later exiled to Israel, where Alex had the honor of living in a kibbutz for 6 months. Years later, after moving to Norristown, Pennsylvania, her husband and she opened a charming coffee shop called Coffee Talk on the first floor of their historic home. It was there that they welcomed musicians, poets, and artists from all walks of life to perform and display their work in a warm and welcoming space. Alex is a survivor. She has dealt with cancer 4 times in her life and was first diagnosed in 1989. She is currently in hospice with lung cancer, yet she doesn't let that slow her down. She continues to invite musicians and artists to monthly open mics in her quaint coffee shop. Music is her medicine and something she will always love, along with the musicians who play it. It has been such an inspiration to work with Alex and to document her life stories. If I were to choose one word to describe this woman, it would be resilience. She recounts her stories with authenticity, joy, and humor. One time during an interview, her little dog proceeded to hump my leg. She calls him Freddie the pervert. Despite all obstacles, her indomitable spirit keeps her moving forward. She is grateful for her life and for the people who share it with her. She simply loves humanity in its entirety and accepts people exactly as they are. Welcome to the life stories of Alex. We hope you enjoy reading them as much as we enjoyed preserving them on paper. You're in for quite an adventure. And this is about the chapter of meeting her husband in Germany. How did you meet Joel? I was in line at the school, and behind me was an American man holding an autobiography of Woody Allen. He asked me, "Don't I look like Woody Allen?" Why he would want to, I don't know, excuse me. I told him no. His name was Joel. We were both going to take a class in German. We could hardly understand each other at first because he could barely speak German and I only knew a little. I was immediately attracted to him. He wasn't my type physically, but I was amazed by his talent. He was a very smart guy and a very interesting guy. He had recently come from Italy and was teaching Renaissance music. He was an excellent musician. He was a bassoonist and he also played oboe, flute, and clarinet, but bassoon was his main instrument. I learned all of this while waiting in line next to him that day. Then we took the same bus in the same direction, and when we left the bus station, we discovered that we lived across the street from each other. Did you start dating right away? Yes, at the time we were living in West Berlin. Since Berlin was surrounded by water, and since we lived so close to each other, he asked if we could take a trip the next day by boat to see Berlin. After we left the boat coming home, he gave me a piece of paper written both in English and German, which listed the 14 reasons why I should marry him. I went to the phone and told my mom, finally, someone has asked me to marry them. I was about 27 or 28 at the time. She asked me, has he been married before? I said, I don't know. Then she asked, how old is he? I said, I don't know. Maybe 35 or 45.
Then she said, run away. They were married for over 40 years.
Nice.
Describe a moment that you made a fool of yourself and what it cost you. I'd been coming home from work on the bus in Israel. A woman was standing in front of me, and I saw these guys sitting in the back of the bus, and I said, would you be so kind as to let the pregnant woman sit? And she got really upset and said, I'm not pregnant. I said, well, maybe you'll get pregnant soon. And this is I missed one little section here about Joel and his personality. Well, never mind. Okay, so I'm going to the back here. The idea of writing life stories came to mind when I realized that everyone has fascinating stories worth telling. Listening and writing down a person's stories helps me appreciate the unique triumphs and trials we each face in our lives. We are all connected in this crazy world. Perhaps hearing and preserving our stories will help us make sense of it all.
Thank you.
Dan Erdman is up next. Dan Erdman is a geologist and licensed site remediation professional. He's the principal of an environmental consulting firm he founded in 2004. When not writing technical documents, he writes poetry, an activity he has dabbled in for several decades. He is presently organizing his collection for the publication of 2, maybe 3 books. He has been published in a few of Katie Comer's Affinity Collab issues, is an active participant in the Meeting House Writers Group, frequently reads at the monthly Steel City open mic in Phoenixville and Char and Stave in Ardmore, and is returning to the Phoenixville Library this evening for his 5th time. Dan.
And not watching the Phillies tonight. I'm going to read 3 pieces. First one is called Dark Cloud. Dark cloud drifts above the scorched farmland and the hungry, thirsty village. Drips but one tear as it mumbles a hope and a prayer, then moves on past the shoreline to gather with its own kind and scream a rainstorm onto the ocean. The second one, I'll give you a little background here. I was going to write a poem this past summer about myself and things I've done in the environmental field, and as I drafted it, I found it kind of boring. So I put it aside. But at that time, I was camping with some friends up at Cape Cod, and my friend's daughter, Amalia, who just turned 21, was there, and she was telling me about what she's doing in life, and she's an organizer in the nationwide group called the Sunrise Movement, and if you want to learn more about that, it's sunrisemovement.org. And their mission is, and this is a statement from their mission statement, we are a movement of young people fighting to stop the climate crisis and win a Green New Deal. And I was very impressed with her passion and energy and the fact that she's not afraid to get into good trouble, which sometimes it takes to make significant changes in society. She's been all over the country organizing things about stopping climate change. So I changed it from writing about myself to this, and this is called Amalia's Tune. I want to do something wrong. Strap solar panels to my head bone and sing an anti-oil industry protest song on the steps of a church in Texas on a Sunday morning. I want to start a good fight, strut into a West Virginia coal miners' bar on a payday Friday night, and tell them why burning carbon rocks just ain't right. I want to do something crazy, stand naked in traffic on the LA freeway and scream, the air is too hazy. And when the officer asks me for ID, just hand him a daisy. I want to do something drastic, like rid the world of cancer-causing agents and plastic. Maybe sabotage a petrochemical plant or something similarly bombastic. And when in the end, the judge says to execute me, and grants me one last wish as the firing squad ties me to a tree. It'll be that the rope is organic and their bullets let free. And this third and last one actually takes place in a library, or a parking lot of a library. And Mark, you tell me, other than writers, do you come across other scary or unusual people in life? All the time. A couple of them are. And I got to warn you, there's a lot of math involved in this poem also, but it's okay. I'll give you the answers to the math equations. And this is called Divisible by 3. Harry the hobo from the woods by the train tracks, and Maria Meringue from the halfway house, and me, and a paper sack of cash, we three, stumbled across concurrently at the edge of the library parking lot as I was heading inside to learn about tax shelters. $12,235.13, which Harry, a mathematical wizard, though you wouldn't suspect so from his looks and his mismatched shoes, said isn't evenly divisible by 3, to which Maria added, nothing's ever even in life, and I just grinned. We could donate the $235.13 to the library, I suggested, and split the remaining $12,000 3 ways, fairly easily and evenly, to which the other two just shook their heads, and Maria Meringue added, nothing is ever easy or fair in life. Then said Harry the hobo, we could throw a nickel into the storm sewer and make a wish, and what's left would be evenly divisible by 3. And Maria Meringue moaned, my wishes never come true. And so we sat all night in the library parking lot around a paper sack of cash, and it rained, and the paper sack got soaked, and it broke. And a nickel rolled away from the pile of cash, so I chased it across the parking lot onto the train tracks, where I was hit by a train and thrown dead into a wet ditch. The nickel on the track flattened and torn. Harry tossed the crippled coin into the wet ditch near me and made a wish that my shoes would fit him, which they did. So he took one for himself. And he proclaimed that $12,235.08 is easily divisible by 2. And so he stuffed into my other shoe $6,117.54 and handed it to Marie Meringue. Then they walked their separate ways back into the woods and to the halfway house, respectively, each thinking that wishes sometimes do come true, but also that life actually is seldom easy, even, or fair.
Our penultimate reader is C.J. McGroarty, a former reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer and a Pushcart Prize nominee with an MFA in creative writing. Her work has appeared in a variety of literary journals and magazines. She's currently at work on her second novel, a supernatural mystery set in the Philadelphia suburbs. C.J.
Hello, thank you for listening. I don't know if I can top the one about the people who found the cash.
Cindy.
Yes.
Greg. Use it Delaware County. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Okay. We'll say hello. Historical fiction set in 1777 at the time of the American Revolution. Perhaps it was some trick of Providence what happened that morning my son's voice came bugling through the air. That morning that feels like yesterday, but if you were to count the years would prove to be a long time ago. Or perhaps it was preordained. I can only tell you, forthrightly as I may, how my life, my old life, you might call it now, was swept away as capriciously as a leaf in the wind, and some other life put in its place. I was living in the countryside, the war in its second year, my husband gone for a soldier, and the three of us, me, my son Jamie, and my dear friend Naomi, were making do on the farm as best we could, unmolested for the most part by the fight, but mindful of our dwindling coin and supplies. It was a mild June morning, the sun inching up in a pewter sky, and I had just stepped out of the hen house with a basket of warm brown eggs, my mind wandering to dinner, a roasted hen with thyme. When suddenly there was Jamie, hurrying towards me, his hand raised in an urgent summons. "Mother," he cried, "come quickly!" He drew up in front of me, our dog Fife at his heels, and turned to look behind him. "It's a man," he said, as if I too might see, but I saw no one. "Where? What man?" I said, straining to peer around the corner of the house, imagining a rider waiting just out of sight, a rider with a letter bearing unhappy news, perhaps the kind of news that tells a woman she's no longer wife but widow. A chill of dread washed over me as I tugged at my son's shoulder and pulled him around. "Jamie, what man?" "In the carriage house. I think he might be dead." "Dead?" He yanked at my arm. "Come see." I set down my basket and followed him, thinking surely he was mistaken. Our farm was not the sort of place you might find by accident, and hard even to find by intention. He slowed his steps at the carriage house doors and turned to wave me in. And a moment later we were standing in the dim space behind our carriage, my son pointing down at, yes, a man indeed, slumped against the rear wall. "You see," he declared, his claim now proven. "Judas," I whispered, "I see." My heart began to hammer at this odd scene before me, a man lifeless as a sack of flour on the dirt, his head hanging slack, one leg of his breeches torn and soaked black with blood, where someone had assailed him. Under the injured leg, a dark puddle was seeping into the earth. Was he really dead? I gathered my resolve and stepped closer. Not a farmhand, that much was certain, as evidenced by the clean broadcloth of his brown frock and the polished brass buttons of his waistcoat. "Sir," I called out to him, and when he made no response, I stooped and shook him by the shoulder and called out again, "Sir?" "Is he dead, Mother?" Jamie asked, breathless, curious as any 12-year-old boy would be. I pressed my fingers to the man's neck. A faint pulse tapped beneath the chilly skin. "No, not yet, but you had better fetch Naomi, quick." As my son hurried off with the dog, I turned back to the oblivious man and tried again to rouse him, again to no avail. Through the ragged hole in the breeches, a gruesome wound oozed, flecked with bits of wool and dirt. A ball wound, for only a ball would rip the flesh in such a way, and the breeches as well. I tugged the cloth away from the wound to get a better look, and found the wool to be of a fine grade, a smooth weave mixed with cotton. A man would pay a few shillings for breeches like those, and for the boots, which were fine as well. A gentleman, was he? But what were shillings or fine boots to this poor gentleman now, for surely the wound would fester, and then the fever would set in and burn him up like a piece of kindling, if loss of blood did not dispatch him first. And then, what? We would have a dead man on our hands. I stood up and wiped my palms on my skirt. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The rough weave of the linen scraped my skin, and again I wiped, harder this time. 1, 2, 3. You see, the number 3 had become my remedy for the frets that came upon me since we moved to the woods, 3 years hence, for the devils that robbed me of my sleep. Behind me, footsteps scuffled on the dirt, and a moment later, Naomi was beside me, Jamie and Fife at her heels. "And what have we here?" she said, her deep voice peppered with the choppy traces of her foreign tongue, a voice I would know anywhere, uniquely hers. She lowered her wiry frame, and with the casual authority that had come from years as a midwife, she pinched the man's cheek and struck it hard, all to no result. "Someone tries to send you to God, Or the devil," I suggested. I gestured toward the bloody leg. "He's been shot, hasn't he?" Jamie said. Naomi kneaded the wound and then dipped her fingers in the dark puddle on the dirt. "Some hours have passed," she murmured, as if to herself. Then she straightened up with a soft grunt. "If the ball has come out, we do not have to dig." "No, no digging," I said, distracted by the questions pluming like smoke in my mind. Who was this man? And what foul business had got him shot? And would that business follow him to our door?
And the man with the final word tonight, he's been so patient back here, is Jim Sassaman. James F. Sassaman is a novelist whose book Dempsey's Diner is currently being submitted to literary agents. Framed by Watergate, it is a late adolescent coming-of-age novel depicting the end of the hippie era. His current novel in progress, working title Two Virgins, is a teenage romance between star-crossed lovers during the late 60s. Jim.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Dempsey's Diner is framed by the Watergate scandal. Two Virgins is framed by the Vietnam War. This scene has a preceding scene. Time is a factor here. In the preceding scene, our 17-year-old narrator is told by the principal of his high school that the faculty is barring him from being nominated as president of the student council. As a consolation, the principal is giving him an open mic, 40 minutes of open mic with his complete class assembled in an assembly room. The date is June 10th, 1970, just a few weeks following the Kent State massacre. Once outside, opposite the principal, I look over at the hallway clock, and I know that I still have some time before the next period, and so I just roam the halls. No need to go back to class. Spitko will ask me why I was called into Tuskie's office, and I'm not ready to answer that just yet. Nuns and other teachers look over at my passing by their classrooms, and they just go right back to face their class. Foxy looks over too, but I just nod and go about my way. Might as well keep moving around the halls. I can afford to bag the rest of the period, and I ain't ready to discuss any of this with Spitko just yet. Spitko will ask me what I'm going to do about it. Just what am I going to do about it? It's not like I've been through something like this before. But wait, maybe Tuskie and his faculty committee are no different than Louie and my neighborhood thugs. That cold Saturday in February last year, before I started going with Colleen, I was putting on my pea jacket in the living room when Jimmy asked me, "Going out to collect? Bills are due on Wednesday." That would be bills for all his paper boys. I was just heading out to collect from about a dozen customers. My take could wait until later. Since I couldn't find my gloves, once outside I kept both hands in my pea jacket pockets, my collection book up under my left arm, and my payment card punch in my right pants pocket. After I turned around our corner, I headed for the street behind ours, where my paper route begins. Halfway I heard my name called, and I looked over at the other side of the street, which is not part of my route. It was Louis Steinmetz, son of the dentist, on my route. He was coming out of a favorite hangout for those neighborhood thugs, a group I never knew Louis to run with. Louis used to talk about going to college. Neighborhood thugs probably can't spell college. The only thing I know about my good thugs was that they did not care for me one bit. "Hey, I gotta talk to you," Louis said as he jogged across the street. Over on my side, he said, "My old man tells me you're late on collecting his bill. Is that right? Well, he doesn't like that, see? And that means I don't like that." I've seen Louis before with red eyes after he smoked joints with Potts Hill High cats I ran with sometimes. This time there was no red in his eyes, but his eyes were glassy as hell. Louis continued with, "And if I don't like that, we're no longer friends, right?" Sounds like it. I was aware that he started to reply with the word "sounds," but then everything looked just as crazy as bad TV reception. What I saw was sideways. Then I saw the ground, and I realized that my collection book had popped out from under my left arm. When I was able to focus in front of me, I saw that he was smirking, and I could hear him being cheered on by the thugs across the street. Then I knew what I was what was going on, and although I tried, I could not pull my fist out of the high-level pea-jacket pockets. Might as well be in handcuffs. After I tried to pull them out, another punch came, this time across my nose. Then I heard brakes screeching and I saw a woman jump out of the driver's seat of a sedan. She started to scream, stop this right now," which only triggered laughter from the other side of the street. That wasn't until she screamed, "I'll call the police," at which point one of the thugs told Louie to return to their hangout house. The woman came over to the sidewalk and asked me if I needed a ride home. I thanked her for her stopping and told her that I lived right around the corner. As I turned the corner, I looked back and saw that she was waving cars in traffic to go around her, and I figured she was just staying in case some cop just happened to pass by. The thugs were staying indoors, and I waved to the lady as I walked back home. Once I opened the front door, I headed straight for the bathroom. On the way, I heard Jimmy's feet stomping as he rushed out of the kitchen. He had to have known that there's no way I could collect from a dozen customers and be back in 10 minutes. We looked at each other for a single second, and he saw what my face looked like. In the bathroom mirror, I saw a slight blackening under my right eye and blood all over my nose, with most of it over the bridge. After I cleaned up and left the bathroom, I found Jimmy standing right outside, extending a washcloth with ice cubes. "Ice pack. Hold this on your nose. 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off. There's more ice in the refrigerator downstairs." Since that day, the only one besides Jimmy to notice my slightly broken nose has been my boxing trainer, Soapy Bar, who lamented, "Sucker punches. They get thrown and they come out of nowhere, man." And come out of nowhere they do. I would venture to say right now that this secret faculty committee has thrown me a species of the genus. The group could have informed me that my wearing black leather jackets or even denim jackets after school hours has offended their sense of propriety. In that scenario, I could have volunteered to wear a white sport coat and a pink carnation. Not that I would ever dress like that, but I could have been given the opportunity to address whatever issues they have with my style. Instead, they threw their sucker punch, and my only option now is to ice it, which I will do at the microphone in the assembly room during the last period today. That's it.
Everybody enjoy themselves tonight?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, thanks so much. You guys always make this a treat for me, too, here at the library. So thanks to all our authors and to our audience as well. The people who were on Zoom are not on Zoom anymore, but we thank them for participating, too. Some of our authors, you may have noticed, have books up on the front table there available for purchase. So please see them. Feel free to mingle. The library closes in another half hour, so you got some time. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.